Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Flexible by Design. I'm Ali Vogel, your host from Flexi Design, and today I have the privilege of welcoming Guy Yalif, the Chief Evangelist of AEO at Webflow. Welcome, Guy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ali. Great to catch up again, and nice to do it here.
Absolutely. So I'm especially excited about this episode because our audience is mostly designers, design leaders, product practitioners, product leaders, and we don't get that many marketers. But everyone wants to understand how AI is impacting their professional world. And so what I think will be especially interesting is to go deep into how AI is affecting the way we design for the web. When I started Flexi, we started as a product design studio, and a lot of our clients were asking us to do web design for them. And I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. So we started doing that. We started building on Webflow, which we love. And eventually we started understanding that even though our websites were incredibly visual and we're getting a lot of attention for that, when it came to performance and when it came to searchability, that was an area that we were drastically failing on. And so part of this conversation is going to be around how to help designers make sure they are on the right track from the get-go when they're designing for the web, and general industry tips and best practices that you have as we design for the web in the AI world. Right?
Wonderful.
So, Guy, I would love to start out our conversation to understand a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to focus on AEO.
I was an AI coding aerospace engineer, spent half of college coding AI to design airplanes and thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life. Loved the idea. Then discovered this thing called product management and was over the moon that you could combine technical expertise and business expertise into one role, and did that for a decade. Had the privilege of building and leading a bunch of product teams in small startups to very large companies. Then spent a decade as a marketer. And 15 of those 20 years were in ad tech. So seeing rapid change, of course, the world is changing even more rapidly now, but rapid change all in service of creating better experiences for people. And then 10 years ago, had the privilege of co-founding and CEOing an AI website personalization company long before Gen AI called Intellimize. And so this chief evangelist role is a totally made up role that is the answer to the question of, okay, what do we do with this human, given that we have a CEO, we have a CMO? And this role is being out in market, talking to fellow practitioners, creating great experiences, fellow leaders all the time. And AEO itself is about attracting the attention of your prospects and showing up in LLMs where they are searching, just like SEO before it was about showing up in Google when your prospects are showing up, both of which have the same goal, which is get them to your website so they can either buy or turn into lead gen pipeline.
So, for all of us out there that aren't familiar with the terms, there's three terms that we hear all the time in the industry as designers. So it would be great if you could help define the following three terms. First off, we have SEO that you mentioned. Then we have AEO, but then we also have GEO. So can you help clarify for the audience what those three terms mean?
EO in all the cases is engine optimization. For SEO, it's search engine optimization. How do I show up? How do I make sure my content shows up as one of the 10 blue links when somebody is searching for a keyword that I care about, that I think has commercial intent? AEO is answer engine optimization, where you are saying the same concept, but now in an LLM. How do I show up in ChatGPT, in Gemini, in Claude, in Perplexity, in Copilot, when someone's searching? And now, instead of it being about them asking keywords that I care about, it's them asking a question that I care about, and I want to be part of the answer to. GEO is generative engine optimization. Some people are saying these are different things and they're related. We as Webflow chose to use AEO as the term. I can explain why if that's interesting. And if the industry settles on GEO, we'll say that instead. But as far as I would suggest to our audience, they're interchangeable. They're about showing up in LLMs wherever they are giving answers, so you drive people to your site.
Amazing. And so you said that Webflow chose AEO. Why did it use that term?
As simple as when we talked about Google, we talked about search engine optimization. That was the activity. We didn't talk about Google's underlying tech. So
Hmm.
we're talking about answer engine optimization. That's the activity, right? You ask questions, you get an answer. In my mind, talking about the activity is clearer. And so that's why we chose AEO. And there are people in both sides there. For us, we were using them interchangeably with AEO as the choice.
Okay, awesome. And to your point about the actual action that we're taking. So we've seen a massive shift between people searching on Google and people going to answer engines like ChatGPT. How are people's behaviors changing today? What's the data that you're seeing there?
The data is that people's behavior is changing rapidly, but it's still very small. Last summer, and I know the numbers are changing monthly, AEO, LLM search was like 2% of total search,
Wow,
almost all
only
the rest being
2%.
Google.
Wow,
So small,
okay.
but growing like exponentially. Sorry, what were you to say?
No, it's saying very small, less, but that was a year ago, like you said.
Yes. And as we all saw, ChatGPT grew to 100, couple 100 million users faster than any other product in history because it's useful. It's genuinely valuable. Okay, so you have this behavior changing. How is it changing? Well, a few pieces of data. One, people are asking deeper questions. And by deeper, I mean when we all learn to speak Google, our average search query is 4 words long. That's not how we normally talk, but we got learned how to get what we need out of Google from it. In LLMs, our average query is 23 words long and it's growing pretty
Wow.
rapidly. And we tend to have whole conversations back and forth. It means that people are still asking about head things, but the tail, the more qualified things, the things that are more niche, that got longer. So for example, for Webflow to create content on what's a good CMS, that's a great head term. How do I optimize global form in Mexico on a mobile device for somebody who's a repeat visitor? That's like a real tail term, putting all those things together. That concept, there's more traffic being sent to those, and there's more traffic being sent to more domains. So the LLMs are likely to cite you from a bunch of sites that like were never approached by others in the past before. So it's three ways, three data points on behavior changing.
Wow, that's incredible. So I'm curious, what are some of the biggest mistakes or some of the biggest shortcomings that you've seen from marketing teams or marketing and design teams pairing up that they are not taking into consideration when they are launching their AEO strategy?
Couple come to mind. One is thinking SEO is dead and AEO is this other thing. I heard during a conference chatting with other people that this Fortune 500 CMO was like, we're doing AEO now, and fired his or her entire SEO team. So mistake number one, thinking this is a whole new thing. And the headlines make it seem like a whole new thing. It's an expansion from SEO. There are a handful of important things that have been adjusted that LLMs value more, but fundamentally, good content, well presented, that's valuable to your prospects. That's core truth. One. Two, thinking the user experience doesn't matter anymore. We're just writing for machines. It's not true. The balance has shifted. But like we've been trying to make our sites easy for machines to read for a long time. I mean, content that the machine would read that the humans don't see. And so we've been trying to make it easy to create engaging experiences for humans and make the site easy to consume for machines. Okay, so that is even more so with LLMs. They like this thing called schema, which is another set of metadata that help lay out. Here's an events page, here's a product page, here's an FAQ page, here's a company page. Okay, but you're still building your sites to tell your story to humans because they are going to want to see your story told your way forever, especially for considered purchases. So I think the let's compromise the user experience completely to make it easier for LLMs is a mistake. I hear some people saying, you know what, LLMs, they like chunked up content. So let's take what flows nicely for a human and chop it up into pieces
Oh.
so that an LLM will be optimized. It'll be optimized for them. And I'm very happy Google came out and said, don't do that. like right for humans.
No, and those are great. And I think something that a lot of designers or teams, let's say, let's look at an SMB, right? And kind of the life cycle of how a website comes to be. You have a founder of a company that wants to tell their brand story. And the first thing that they do is they normally hire a design agency because they saw some visuals that they really like. And now you have a founder working with an agency. And something that I've seen is sometimes, more design oriented agencies, they're not necessarily up to date with the importance of SEO, AEO, how to structurally ensure that the site is not just going to look great, but is going to perform and sell the services of the company. Maybe it tells a beautiful visual story, but if you're not searchable, then have you really achieved that goal? And so I'm curious from your perspective, when you are advising, what are the first fundamental things that you would tell their design partner that they should be looking at, that they should be doing?
In my humble opinion, job one is understanding everything around product market fit. What problem are you solving for whom in a way that delights them enough to pay you money? Everything else is secondary. That's more important than SEO, AEO, or any of the other things because that helps drive the whole business. And I think that everything else is in service of that. Okay, so if you're doing that, you can use the website to help learn about that song. You can go experiment with headlines, experiment with different ways of showing up. I think ads are a great way to do that because you can go test things out at a scale probably larger than you're organically attracting to your site. Great. Specific to AEO, a couple of things. I think so. Given that you want to create a site that is visually stunning, emotionally evocative, and engaging to prospects, telling that story you're working on, and at the same time, really easy for LLMs to consume because they're constantly trading off how expensive is it for me to crawl this site versus how good is this site? What's the quality? You want to make it really inexpensive for them to crawl the site. Okay, so ideally, you want a system that's going to help you auto generate all the technical stuff in the background that makes it easy for LLMs. Auto generate schema, that it's hard to overestimate how important that is. Auto generate SEO metadata, auto generate the alt text for images. The LLMs look at accessibility data. Auto generate sitemap.xml to tell the crawlers, here's how to look through my site. Make sure you don't have any broken links on your site. Like SEO and AEO don't matter if your internal links on your site, not the external ones, the internal ones are broken. So I'd try to auto generate a bunch of that. And the one thing that might impact is to consider putting the punchline up front when you're talking and consider adding FAQs at the end, even if they are repeating what was said before, because you increase the probability that an LLM at the top says, ooh, I want to crawl the full page. And at the bottom, ooh, I see content that matches the question I was just asked in my LLM UI.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that because we had a specific case with a client where we are redesigning their site. We said, please let us help you, work on your site because it's such a powerful tool for you. And this client, they said, yeah, but we don't actually get a lot of business through our site. We get more business through relationships and through conferences. And my response to them was, that's great. But when it comes to actually scaling your efforts, how are you thinking about that just beyond those one-on-one relationships? So what we ended up doing is we redesigned. I was looking over it again and I went to the head of product and I said, "Hey, I noticed we don't have FAQs on here." And she's like, "Well, I don't think we need them. Actually, I think we can just launch the site without." And I told her, it's like buying a Chanel bag without getting the authenticity card. And that
I love
landed
that
for her.
metaphor. That's awesome.
So she's like, well, I don't have time to write the FAQs. And I said, well, you know what? Let me give you some starting points. So I actually put the website into one of the LLMs. I sent her that list and I said, here's a great starting point for you. Look it over, make sure it lands. And it's better to launch the site with FAQs and then learn that we might need to modify them than to launch it without. And so I think this is something when it comes to that balance between working with marketers, it's so important for us to be having these conversations, not only tell people how to get started, but also emphasize what are the most important things that if you're not an expert, but you only have time to focus on a couple core things when it comes to SEO, which you just mentioned. But now let's move towards AEO. What are the couple things that every head of product that doesn't necessarily have that marketing background, what should they be thinking about? What should they be advising when it comes to optimizing for AEO?
If you have the SEO fundamentals in place, the two
Yes.
things I would suggest focusing on are answering questions and adding schema metadata to your site so that you have a better chance of matching to what the question's being asked, and you made it really easy for the LLM to consume your content. And I think the mental model shift of my site as a destination to with answer engines, my site as a destination, it's also a data source for the LLMs. It is one of the best ways, the best way for me to feed content into the LLMs. And does that matter? In B2B, Forrester surveyed a bunch of marketers. 95% of them said they are going to use LLMs as part of their buying process this year. We, and our top 6 product pages, added FAQs to the bottom of them, added schema to those FAQs, auto-generated from Webflow. In 2 weeks, more than half, 57% of the incremental citations Webflow got in LLMs were from those 6 pages. There are easy wins. Another one was adding a table of contents to blog posts. That affects design directly. Where would you put this? For us, it's sitting off to the side. Easy win for the LLMs. Really easy to auto generate. So those are some examples, but the answer to your question directly, questions and schema.
That's amazing. Now, let me ask you about images and video. We have clients that, want to put a lot of images and really impactful video on the site. And we know from firsthand experience that this can really drastically alter performance. What are the types of things that we should be thinking about? How should we be optimizing from a design perspective when it comes to actually optimizing for SEO and AEO in terms of the balance of text to video to image? And is there a nice balance that we can find there? And if so, what have you found?
I think we should optimize for creating engaging experiences for humans, full stop. Given that optimization, we should technically absolutely optimize for the weight of the page, right? We should have images that auto optimize for the connection and device that they're showing to. We should have videos that lazy load, that technical term lazy load, and stream based on the strength of the connection. For the machines, for the LLMs, they're not going to look at either one of those. What they're going to do is look at the metadata, the alt text for the image. They're going to look at the transcript for the video. So if you haven't generated those, please do. Make sure that the metadata is there. Webflow can help you do that automatically. It'll look at the image and suggest it. For the video, if you don't think the transcript makes sense on the page for the human, no problem. Couple of ideas. One, put it on the page for the human with a expando of some sort. Or two, don't put it on the page at all, but do put it in the metadata. Do put it in the schema for the page, because that is what the LLM is going to use. 2 other things. One, test it. It is eye-opening how counterintuitive images and videos and carousels in the hero on the homepage, what you think works doesn't, and vice versa, and just be data-driven. And the other one is just think clarity so that you have one H1, logically structured H2s and H3s. Those simple things, they actually make a real difference for the LLMs. If you are laying out a page and your technical team is not actually using H1s, H2s, H3s, you're just making the LLM do more work and guess. It's more likely to get it wrong.
So I'll tell you something that happened to us recently that was such a huge learning. We worked with a client that changed directions several times, and ultimately they ended up going with some pretty heavy video and images. And we launched the site on Webflow, and we understood after not that long that they were getting excessive usage. And we were really puzzled by this because we asked them, hey, are you doing any paid media? Is there any reason you should be having tons of traffic on your page? If you are, that's great, but this is a little odd. Well, we came to understand that the assets were not optimized. And as soon as we made this very simple fix of compressing the assets without damaging any of the quality, not only did their usage go way down, but also it actually enabled them to really understand what was critical and what was not critical when it came to the messaging and the general visuals on their page. So, and in the end, for a company that's trying to get found, that wants to show up in the rankings, that wants to have great SEO and AEO, performance was more important than having a flashy video because they already had a great video on their header. It wasn't necessary to do both. So I think that when it comes to actually building the site, so much of it is trial and error. So with that, I would love to hear a little bit more about some other obvious solutions that maybe people aren't thinking about when it comes to AEO. Any tips, any things you see that people are just kind of missing the mark on?
A few come to mind as additional things to share, but to what you shared, boy, that resonates so strongly. And the one thing neither you nor I said is that milliseconds of load time also have a material, measurable impact on site abandonment and conversion rates. And to your point about the obvious things, 25% of Google's top 10 links don't have SEO metadata. Right? 7% of sites block LLMs. Some percentage that's appropriate and right because they make money off of their content. But for everybody else where you want traffic from the LLMs, that makes no sense at all. We talked before about broken links. A couple of the other ones, brand is back. PR is back. And they help AEO a lot. Why? Brand is also about telling consistent stories
Yeah.
everywhere. And LLMs are looking for consistency. But the PR is back because when you do the blog, guest blog post, you do the webinar, you do the podcast and so on, you do the social media post, that's all fodder for the LLMs. And the last one is that measurement for those that were thinking about SEO before, it really is, that's the one thing that is same principle but different specifics. In SEO, as you probably know, you say, hey, I want to be known for these topics. Here are the keywords that those topics represent. Those topics, where did I rank in the 10 blue links for those? Okay. In AEO, you say, here are the topics I want to be known for. What questions do those correspond to? Did I show up in the answers? What was my share of voice relative to my competitors? What was the sentiment? What was the message pull through? What was the accuracy? Concepts that just don't exist when Google is using our own words, but an LLM is reformulating all of our carefully crafted differentiated language.
That's so interesting. You also, in another conversation that I want to bring into here around video being a huge component of where LLMs are taking in information from. So we had an example where a client was posting a lot of different content on different platforms that wasn't YouTube necessarily. And I said to the client after we had this conversation, you have tons of explainer videos, so much rich content across other channels. Why are you not reposting it on your YouTube channel? I heard from Guy that this could be a great source for AEO traffic. I'm wondering, do you think that this particular action, reposting videos on other channels to YouTube specifically and making sure that, all the transcripts are answering the right types of questions, do you think this has ultimately an impact on their AEO ranking?
My intuition and the data I see says yes, but I think it's yes enough that it's an experiment worth running. They've done the hard work.
Right.
Creating the video is the really hard thing. Reposting it to another platform and then letting that platform auto transcribe it, that's a lot easier. That seems like a test worth running. YouTube happens to be a channel that the LLMs are looking at extra compared to SEO.
That's really interesting. So really, if you've already created the content, you might as well repost that valuable content on YouTube because this can, in theory, help your AEO ranking.
It's worth the experiment. If this is content you want ungated, if it's content you want gated, then put the teaser out there on YouTube and see what happens. Try it on LinkedIn. Try a YouTube short. There are AI tools that will go create snippets, even a vertical video, to go try in each of those, of course, with human review, that create more opportunities to engage with us short attention span humans and the LLMs.
Yeah, well, actually, this platform, Riverside, it does exactly that. So not only does it auto edit, which of course needs human review, but it does create these magic clips that are, 30 to 1 minute. It's still getting there. I won't say it's perfect, but it's in progress. But hey, it's a huge step up from a year ago. It's really made it so much more accessible for businesses of all kind to be able to post content. And like you said, just put it out there and try it out. There's one more thing I want to mention. One thing to be really careful of that I learned is when you are creating images that are words and posting it onto your website, the LLM or SEO is actually reading it as an image, not as the word. I know that might sound obvious. And when we initially did an audit of our site after we started learning so much about SEO and AEO through working on our clients, a year later, we went back and we're like, okay, we're not having the performance that we would think we would. Let's go back and do an edit and an audit of our own. And so we did that and we're like, how did we miss this? The machines are not reading this the way humans are actually. So we went back, we, added into the schema the correct word in addition to the image that, the human reads as a word on the site. But I think this is an area that designers or, product makers miss so often because we want to see the visuals. But if you're missing that metadata, if you're missing the core meaning of what the machine should be reading, inside of the schema, you know, you're really not doing yourselves any favors when it comes to being found. So this was a big learning. So thank you for bringing all of that up. Now, I'm curious to talk a little bit more about Webflow's role. So, Webflow has really been one of the leaders when it comes to helping to make marketers, even founders, just more easily experts when it comes to launching and being successful on the web. Can you tell our audience from a practical perspective, if you were to launch your website on Webflow, how is it going to help you with schema, with markup, with all of these technical things that we might not know a lot about coming from the domains that we do?
Humbly submitted, I believe Webflow is the best place to build a site on the web if you care about AEO. Thinking about the different parts of AEO, it will help you write content that is on brand, that will answer the questions people care about. One, two, it is world class and genuinely differentiated on the technical side. You have 330 points of presence around the world, serving your site up super quickly. It auto generates basically anything you could think about technically that helps you with SEO or AEO, which is a real help because there are some things we talked about schema before. To get that right, you need an engineer and a marketer or designer in the room at the same time. That never happens. That's super hard to make happen. Now, to empower non-technical folks to auto-generate this effectively is a big unlock. It helps you create then the visually stunning, emotionally evocative experiences you want for humans. So you're speaking to the human and to the machine. And it's got a bunch of analytics that will help you understand how content is performing and let you test at any level you want. And if you would like to take a peek, not at Webflow, sure, you can go to webflow.com and look at Webflow, please, by all means do. But no pitch, just value add on AEO, go to webflow.com/AEO. Again, no pitch, put in your domain name. We will run a dozen agents across 1,700 lines of prompts that will go look at your site, look off your site across a rubric we made up. We made up 5 different levels of maturity. We made up a name called AEO Maturity Model. This thing will assess your site against that rubric. It's not the be all end all. It doesn't replace an agency. It absolutely is a huge step forward in where do I go next? How do I frame this for my team? How do I think about this based on data that we can see on your site and off your site? We hope it helps.
So it's funny you say that because with this example I mentioned to you about the FAQs, when the client was still unsure whether they wanted to make the investment to add the FAQs. And I actually pulled up the AEO maturity test and sent it to them. And the number one recommendation on that AEO maturity test was FAQs. And so I sent it to the client and I was like, hey, I just wanted to send this to you just so you can see, this isn't Flexi telling you, this is Webflow that, knows the web. Here's the top 3 recommendations. I just let her read it. And then she's like, yeah, okay, let's move forward with it. And we implemented it. So I'm curious, kind of the last thing here, just to wrap it up. When you're thinking about AEO and building a site, what does seamless collaboration between the design team, the product team, and the marketing team look like?
In my mind, it looks like a few things. Everyone working from the same canvas, people being able to express their ideas and bring them to life with pixel perfect control. Even if you don't know how to write code, right? Create the animation, create the visualization. It also looks like the ability to go branch off and make some changes and have people review that and decide, yep, we want to merge that back in. It looks like being able to, on the canvas, be like, you know what, Ali, I want to add a note here and to collaborate back and forth right there on the canvas. It's roles and permissions where I can go create something, but you're the approver. It's not going to go live until then. It looks like sharing staging links, sharing preview links, helping everybody do what they are excellent at and enjoy doing without a whole bunch of tooling getting in the way.
Yeah, something that you said that I really appreciated is something I always tell clients is like, you know what, we can try it and we can always iterate on it. So there's core foundations, and I think this is a really nice summary that I wanted to bring things home with. There's core foundations that everyone should be thinking about when launching a site. Your site is not a beautiful business card on the web, at least if you're a serious company that wants to actually bring in business through your site. You should really be thinking about it as a lead generation machine. How do you actually get there? You need to properly structure it. So when you're thinking about your site structure, you need to obviously design it in a way that tells your brand story, but also not forget the important part of making sure that it's built properly, that you have the proper structure, that you have the proper schema, that you have all the metadata in. So there's all kinds of things that if you have, again, the right partners, they should be able to advise you on. And then you should also be able to leverage tools. Obviously, we use Webflow. There are other tools, but as Guy said, we've at least found that this has been super effective for our clients in taking a lot of that heavy lifting that used to be done manually and just, auto-generating it to make your life as a marketer and as a founder and as a product manager or head of product or creative easier, and be able to have all the fundamentals. But you're never going to have the perfect equation, and you're never going to know until you actually launch the site and start collecting data. So don't forget, as part of the equation, to make sure that you're actually connected to Google Analytics and that you add other tools in to be able to measure the impact and measure what's working and what's not working. There's a lot of resources out there, both free and paid, that can help you be successful. So don't be afraid to be creative. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to look at the data and change your site based on assumptions that maybe were false to begin with, or at least you saw your users weren't resonating with it. And only then will you be able to truly optimize to get both a stunning site and one that's high performing as well.
Resonates so very strongly, Ali. And you made my little brain think of 2 additional things. The first being about collaboration, where it'll sound silly, but like empower each other so that you can work better together by working separately. Wouldn't it be great if the growth team that was rapidly iterating on part of the site or product, who's really focused on hitting a number, never worried about breaking the brand? They're like, I've got a number to hit. If I'm a little bit off brand, so be it. Well, what if they had a sandbox? That kind of empowerment, I think, enables people to run much more quickly all along.
We actually love to create the brand essentials, and we do give them that sandbox both in the Figma files that we collaborate on. We also have our own internal one. So, client can't mess with it, especially when we're in the ideation process. But also, like you said, the staging link, it's so important. And it's so powerful and important to have that sandbox, as you said, to be able to play, to experiment, to actually put things into production, to roll back, or to A/B test different things. So that's great. And we definitely love doing that as designers working with marketers.
And to be able to create a design system and then have marketers have the roles and permissions to just operate within it, it's so empowering, and it builds brand because it creates consistency. And the other thing I was going to mention before is we happen to have a product called Webflow Analytics that will also tell you on the canvas right there as you're building, where did people come from? Where did they go to? How long did they stay? What was their scroll depth? What did they click on? To help you do a better job of designing, to give you that heat map and context in the moment where you're putting metaphorical pen to paper.
I love that. That's so great. That's so powerful for all these teams collaborating. So, Guy, thank you so much for sharing your insights, for bringing in all your knowledge. We talked about important terminology and kind of understanding actually the blue ocean of where AEO may go. You might have this conversation in 6 months and have a whole new evolution. So I look forward to that. If people want to get in touch with you, connect with you, ask you questions, what is the best way for them to do that?
Please use LinkedIn. It is a wonderful way to connect. If you have the space, reference this so we have context, this conversation. I would love to have the conversation because we are all learning this rapidly evolving space together.
Absolutely. So thank you all for listening. Once again, I'm Ali Vogel from Flexi here at Flexible by Design. Thank you so much, Guy Yalif, Chief AEO Evangelist from Webflow, for joining. We'll see you next time.